even though they were supposed to stay on the sidewalk. It wasn't long until the bright banners and backpack puppets overflowed the narrow walkways and took over the street. It was impossible to see them all or to pick out the radiant smiles of those of us marching toward the banks of the Ohio River. Our voices rose together in chants as we listened to speakers and talked about how clean air and clean water are human rights that are being denied for too many people. I was one of the leaders of the March and Rally for Clean Energy and Healthy Communities during the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in 2013, when it was held in my town in Louisville, Kentucky. Thousands of Unitarian Universalists from around the country participated with local organizations like Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and the organization I am now executive director of, Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. At the rally, Kentucky poet Wendell Berry spoke and climate justice activist Tim DeChristopher. It was the largest environmentally focused rally in Louisville's history, and it was such a balm for our spirits to join together at a time when our hearts were broken by continued investment in fossil fuel, with mountaintop removal creating dirty water supplies, making people sick, with coal plants making the air toxic to kids who should be playing outside. Together, there on the banks of the Ohio River, our hearts beating in sync, we knew that we are better together. We know that in order to create change in an organization, an institution, or a country, first, critical mass must be achieved. And change theorists tell us that the tipping point for achieving critical mass is 25% of a population. When 25% of a population believes a certain way, they can tip the scales in their direction. Once a movement reaches 25%, it is basically just a matter of time. You still have to keep up the work, of course, but the moral arc begins to bend. But getting to that 25% takes a lot of work, especially when you're talking about a large and diverse population. The only way to get there is for people and organizations to work across barriers, across different belief systems, different geographies, different races and classes and ability levels and genders and sexual orientations. It means sometimes agreeing to disagree on other issues so that you can work together on the one that you agree on. Unfortunately, though, working together is often hard for organizations, even ones that agree. Take Interfaith Power and Light. Some of the faith communities that I work with don't believe that I can be a minister because I am a woman, and they certainly would never invite me to preach the sermon. Thank you very much. Other religious traditions shy away from the phrase climate change. Meanwhile, others are pushing the connection between climate justice and environmental justice, and even connecting both to reproductive justice and to the rise in human trafficking. So we're in completely different places, and yet we all come together in Interfaith Power and Light because we share two things in common: care for our planet and care for one another. We come together because we know that we are better together. We sometimes forget this. Divide and conquer is happening today, and sometimes it feels like that tactic is winning. Groups and organizations that have more in common than they do differences are pitted against each other. Or we're sometimes sold the line that if we can't agree on everything, then we can't work together on anything. But this is wrong. Particularly in times of crisis, when our inclination may be to hunker down and take care of our own, we sometimes forget that we are better together. We know, though, that we are stronger, smarter, more compassionate, able to accomplish more, and even more courageous when we work together. You may have heard that a minister has one sermon that they give over and over and over again in different ways, and it may be that this one is mine, that we are better together. Whether we are talking about congregations in an association, faith communities working together to achieve a common goal, or about organizations partnering and networking together on areas of agreement to create social change, we are better together. Let us count the ways. First, we are better together because we are stronger together. We know the Aesop fable of the bundle of sticks, where a wise elder demonstrates that one person, like a twig, can easily be broken, but if the people are together, like a bundle of sticks, they are stronger. Echoing this on her eponymous show several seasons ago, this is where my geekdom comes out, Supergirl shares that the famous S on their chest stands for the Khalil family motto, El Mayara, which in Kryptonian, in case you didn't know, means stronger together. Supergirl says she doesn't want to be a hero like her cousin, someone who goes it alone. Instead, she has friends and family who know her secret and can help her. And certainly we know that we are stronger together. One of the best contemporary examples of this, I think, is same-sex marriage in this country. What changed wasn't the Constitution, it was the country. The Freedom to Marry campaign got us to the tipping point by bringing together LGBT activists, young conservatives, political leaders, religious institutions, healthcare workers, and so much more. It took time, but working together, enough people finally saw gay people as human beings worthy of rights and dignity. If this sounds familiar to what is happening right now in regards to racial justice, it should. There have been Black Lives Matter rallies in small rural communities around Kentucky. It blows my mind. And closer to home for you at places like Yellowstone, where just this week there was a Black Lives Matter rally organized by community members of Mammoth Hot Springs and Gardner. When companies make the strategic call that supporting Black Lives Matter will earn them more money than staying silent, you know we have reached the tipping point. Black Lives Matter, like freedom to marry, is a force to be reckoned with. We are stronger together. Second, we are better together because we are smarter together. Alone, we have our own opinions and feelings and ideas, and that's great, but it can also become an echo chamber. When people come together across differences in their lived experiences, we add new opinions and new feelings and ideas, deepening our pool of shared meaning. And the more people and perspectives we add to the mix, the deeper and wider the pool becomes. This is one of my favorite things about really good meetings or gatherings, the synergy that comes when one group's ideas build on another, and we come up with something so much better than we could have come up with on our own. Y'all remember the picture of all those white men discussing maternal health care a few years ago? Most of the women that I know were outraged. Nothing about us without us, we cried, and with good reason. But I see this happen all the time, and in truth, I have perpetuated it myself. Perhaps the best example I can give is of interfaith work that puts important meetings or events on Friday nights, the Jewish Sabbath. If you don't have any Jewish people at the table, you are more likely to miss stuff like this. We are smarter together. Third, we are better together because we are more compassionate together. So often in environmental movements, we have denied people directly impacted by climate change a seat at the table. So many environmental movements are made up of majority of middle-class white people, even though people of color and indigenous people are often impacted first and hardest by climate change. This is one reason Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light is proud to be a member of the U.S. Climate Action Network. USCAN, which is what it's called for short, is a network of climate justice organizations that explicitly states that systems of racial and economic injustice must be dismantled and a new system created to bring justice to the marginalized communities that are most affected by climate change. We seek to address these historic inequities in our work, they boldly declare. Without these voices at the table, white environmentalists tend to intellectualize climate change or to focus on the impact it will have on sea levels or polar bears. We miss how it is impacting people right now. We miss the rising rates of asthma in poor and Black communities. We miss entire communities being displaced in ravaging cyclones. We miss that people are experiencing water scarcity already. We need these stories because they make us understand the lived realities of climate change right now in human terms. We are more compassionate together. Fourth, we are better together because we are able to accomplish more together. Of course, all these stories attest to that, don't they? So too does the inclusion of the Green New Deal as an essential part of the official Democratic Party platform. The work of climate, health, economic, and racial justice advocates all coming together. On the smaller scale, though, I can tell you that when I call my elected officials' office to ask for a meeting, I am much easier to ignore when I am the lone minister of a single congregation than I am when I am representing an interfaith coalition of religious communities across the state. Together, we accomplish more. Finally, we are better together because we are more courageous together. We saw this with Unitarian Universalist congregations when they began to put up Black Lives Matter signs. It was almost exponential, starting with just a few and growing in leaps and bounds until I would hazard a guess now that a very large percentage of UU congregations have these signs somewhere on their property. Some even have had to replace them over and over and over again. And this is true for our lives as individuals as well, that we are courageous together. There has been a lot of action around racial justice here in Louisville, Kentucky recently, the home of Breonna Taylor. Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light has been there, making sure that we connect the dots between climate justice and racial justice. So when a call went out for clergy to come because a right-wing militia had announced plans to confront protesters, I knew I had to be there, that this was an important way to put my faith into action. But I was scared. The last time we had done something like that here in Louisville, the cops were very clearly protecting the heavily armed right-wing militia, not the nonviolent protesters. So I talked with my local colleagues. We talked together about how afraid we were, but that this was something we were called to do. A few of us dropped out, but most of us didn't. Instead, we had conversations with our families and made some fatalistic just-in-case plans, and then we headed out. When we arrived at the protest site, people thanked us for being there. It mattered. We went to the front line, right in front of the police line, with the militia on the other side, and we clergy stood there together in prayerful pose for hours. It didn't matter if our theologies were the same or different. It didn't matter whether our politics were in alignment or not. It didn't matter if we agreed on any other social justice issue. We were together, and their presence gave me courage, and my presence gave them courage. And our collective presence as faith leaders gave the other protesters courage. We are more courageous together. As Unitarian Universalists, we live with the natural tension between independence and association, freedom and order. We are unique and independent, and yet at the same time, whenever we work together across congregations, in state justice networks, in coalitions, in clusters, in regions, in interfaith associations, it turns out that we are stronger, smarter, more compassionate. It turns out that our mostly small congregations are able to accomplish more and to be more courageous. When we come together, we strengthen the circle of enabling love, and indeed we make it wider and wider as we create something beautiful and wondrous. We are indeed better together. May it be so.